There's a sentence that turns up in case reports written by oncologists, neurologists, and endocrinologists. It arrives near the bottom of the file, almost as a side note. The patient says some version of the same thing. My dog knew before I did. The dog kept sniffing one spot, or pressed into one hip every evening, or wouldn't leave the bedroom. Weeks later, sometimes months later, a scan came back with something on it. The doctors note the pattern. They don't quite explain it, and the people who live through it carry a quiet, slightly unsettled feeling for a long time afterward. The standard explanation is that dogs are simply tuned to behavior. They notice you sitting differently. They notice you walking slower. They register the small change in your routine before you do, and they act on it. That part is true, and it isn't nothing. But it isn't what's happening here. Across more than a decade of peer-reviewed research, what scientists keep finding is something stranger. Long before your gait changes, before you feel tired, before any visible symptom shows up at all, your body is already leaking the news into the air around you. The dog is not reading your posture. The dog is reading your chemistry. And the chemistry is changing whether you've noticed or not. In 2006, a research team led by McCulloch ran an experiment that looks, on paper, almost unfair. They took 5 ordinary pet dogs with nothing more than basic obedience training, the kind that sit when you ask and come when you call. They gave those dogs a few weeks of scent work on breath samples collected from cancer patients. Then they sealed the room, blinded the handlers, and presented the dogs with breath samples they had never encountered before, from people they had never met. The results, published in Integrative Cancer Therapies, were almost hard to believe. The dogs identified lung cancer with 99% sensitivity and 99% specificity. For breast cancer, the numbers were 88 and 98. These weren't laboratory animals bred for the work. They were 5 dogs that, a few months earlier, had been sleeping on couches. And after a handful of training sessions, they were performing at near diagnostic accuracy against samples from strangers. What the dogs were doing, on a chemical level, was sorting volatile organic compounds. Tumors release a slightly different chemical signature into a person's breath, sweat, and urine. The compounds exist at concentrations so low that the lab equipment built to measure them costs more than a small car. The dog does the same work in seconds with a body part that doubles as the same snout used to chase squirrels. The same pattern has been documented in disease after disease. In 2022, a French team led by Grandjean published one of the largest blind tests ever run on canine COVID detection. 335 adults, sweat samples sealed in glass, 5 trained detection dogs, sniffing the samples without ever seeing the people they came from. Sensitivity came in at 97% overall. For the asymptomatic cases specifically, the dogs hit 100%. Every single infected person without symptoms, identified by smell, in seconds. The PCR test was slightly more specific overall, but it took hours and required a swab pushed into a stranger's nose. The dog needed neither. A sealed jar, a half second of stillness before the sniff, and a decision. What this means, biologically, is something most owners have never been told. Infection changes how a person smells. Cancer changes it. Diabetes changes it. The compounds drifting off the surface of someone whose blood sugar is crashing are not the same compounds drifting off the same person an hour earlier. To you, the human standing in the room, nothing has changed. The room smells the same. The person looks the same. The dog has already noticed. And this is the part that takes the longest to settle. Your dog, lying on the floor next to you right now, is not running a one-time scan. The nose is always working. There is no off switch. Every breath you exhale, every drop of sweat, every cell sloughed off your skin onto a sleeve the dog later rests its head on, is going through the most sensitive chemical analyzer that has ever lived in a household. And the dog is doing this on a person it has built a baseline for. It knows what you smell like when you are healthy. It knows what the air in your kitchen is like at 3 in the afternoon when you've been working. It knows the smell of your bed when you have slept well. So when something shifts, the shift is registered against years of background data the dog never had to think about collecting. Here is the part that almost nobody writing about this on the internet wants to admit. The dog is not always faster than the technology. In a 2017 study published in the Journal of Diabetes Science and Technology, Evan Loss and his colleagues followed 8 people with type 1 diabetes who lived with trained medical alert dogs. Real homes, real dogs, real low blood sugar episodes. The researchers compared the dog's spontaneous alerts to a continuous glucose monitor taped to the patient's body. The dog caught about 36% of the hypoglycemic events. The monitor caught the same events, on average, 22 minutes earlier. So the small electronic device, beeping quietly from a belt clip, was faster and more reliable than a dog that had been trained for the work for years. The dog still alerted 3.2 times more often during a low than during a normal blood sugar reading, which is far above chance, but the picture is more complicated than the viral version of this story suggests. Trained medical alert dogs are not flawless, so why does the moment still feel uncanny? Because the dog isn't a glucose monitor. The dog is doing all of this without being asked, without being trained, without knowing what diabetes is. The dog has been quietly auditing you for years, and occasionally, what its nose catches is something you wouldn't want anyone to catch. That is the part that lands strangely. Your dog has been smelling you for the entire length of your relationship. Every illness you have ever recovered from, every infection that came and went without you noticing it was there, every minor chemical shift in your body that didn't quite reach the level of a symptom was probably noted somewhere in a brain that has no language to tell you about it. The dog has been holding a great deal back, not deliberately, not secretly, just because there is no shared vocabulary for what it has been picking up. The closest the dog can come is to sit a little differently next to you, or to start sniffing one spot, or to refuse to leave the bedroom on a Tuesday when, as far as you could tell, nothing was wrong. None of this means you should panic the next time your dog gives you a long look. Most of what they register is benign. A new soap, garlic from lunch, the neighbor's perfume on your jacket. But if a dog who has lived with you for years suddenly fixates on one part of your body, returns to it, presses its nose into the same spot day after day, that pattern is worth taking seriously. Not as a diagnosis, as a reason to call your doctor and mention it during your next appointment. Plenty of physicians in oncology, neurology, and endocrinology will tell you privately that they keep a small mental file of cases where a dog was the first signal on the chart. Bring it up. The worst case is that nothing turns up and you've had a routine visit. The sentence from the start, the one that keeps turning up at the bottom of case reports, is not really about premonition. It isn't about psychic dogs or some mystical sixth sense. It's about a gap between the sensory channel your dog has lived inside its entire life and the much narrower one you happen to use. Your dog isn't holding out on you. Your dog has just been running since the day it met you, on a frequency you don't have a receiver for. And every once in a while, what it picks up on that frequency is something the doctors haven't seen yet. If you've made it this far and you want more of what the research actually says, the inside of the dog's head, the parts that don't make it into the viral stories, you can subscribe and stay close. That's the whole project here. The dog has been telling you things. We're just trying to translate.